been busy.
Yes, we have.
You've been traveling a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
I've been stuck in the office a lot. So I know we're both doing big things. Well, look, today we wanted to chat about taking over an existing location, right? We get a lot of people who are excited about the camp. They're excited about being a franchise owner. And a lot of them are stuck deciding between, do I want to build a location from the ground up, or do I want to take over an existing location, right? And from time to time, we have opportunities like that come up. And so I wanted you to walk us through that as someone who's not done it once, but successfully twice taken over existing locations. Kind of walk us through the thought process there. What were you thinking about, and how did you derive at the decision that that was the right way to go?
Totally. So first, I mean, there's benefits of both, right? And so, you got to consider how quickly do you want to open is one thing to consider. With an existing location, it's already up and running. You're not looking for space. You're not waiting on things to come in. You're not building a location out. You can hit the ground running, right? Whereas obviously a new territory, there's things that take a little more time. You got to find the right space. You got to, just finding a location in general can be a little challenging sometimes. Then you got to wait on, equipment, the build out process and those. So it's really like, how quickly do you want to get started? And for me, the opportunity was there. And, my second location is 25 miles from my other location. So it just kind of made sense because, from where I'm at, I also commute to work. So I kind of do a little triangle. Whereas if I had my Corona location and then new territory space, where is that? And how does that fit my life and my lifestyle? And essentially, being a business owner, you want it to make sense. So.
No, that's great. And I think, you're kind of right. Like, how fast do I want to get into it, right?
Yeah.
Because, real estate is like the big X factor.
Yeah.
I've seen people sign a lease in 90 days. I've seen instances where it takes several months, right? And it's finding the space, negotiating the lease, and then do I need a CUP, right? The permitting, construction, build out. Are there delays? And, it's like, oh, I'm a franchise owner. And then it's 12 months later or 9 months later, as opposed to 30 days later, right? So I think that is a big part of it.
That's a huge thing. And, my original Corona location was off McKinley. And it took a little while to find our new space. But again, it was something that I still was able to build a new location.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun. But I already had an existing client base, and I also wasn't really starting fresh. It was just, hey, we're relocating.
Right.
So.
Well, and you took over during the pandemic.
Yes.
So, I mean, how did that play into the consideration, right? Because, I mean, things are on lockdown. Fitness is trending down, right? I mean, the whole industry knew that, right? Now, we rebounded, thank goodness, right? But nobody knew at the time. So that's a pretty gutsy decision. I mean, how did you arrive at this is the time to do it?
It was an opportunity. It was an opportunity that I could not pass up.
There you go.
Absolutely not. And not only that, but the camp reputation and the brand itself, it's just amazing. Like, I trust the company. I knew that we were going to bounce back. I knew it was going to be okay.
Right.
And so, a lot of risk, but a lot of reward too.
Yeah.
And so, there were nights when I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd check MindBody, right? Because I use MindBody, and I'd be like, oh my God, like literally $4,000 coming in when I took over, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? But it's in those moments where you really figure out, okay, I'm gonna rise to the occasion and I'm gonna make it happen because that's just the type of person I am.
Right? Yeah, but you had to.
But you gotta have that grit, and you gotta go all in. And I was already all in. I had worked for the company since 2016.
Okay.
So I kind of knew what I was doing, and so just the opportunity to have my own location was like, okay, if this thing fails, this is my name on the line, And so it wasn't an option to fail. It was, there was no option to fail.
Right.
Sure, I would have done things a little bit differently, maybe pulled the trigger a little bit sooner on certain decisions, but all in all, I mean, it was the best decision I ever made. But, it was It was terrifying too. But it was fun. It was fun.
Was that always the game plan though? I mean, you're working for the company in 2016. Was that always the plan to move toward ownership, or is that just something that kind of fell into your lap?
Yeah, it was definitely not the plan. I started as a challenger in 2015.
Okay.
In Redlands, and I loved the camp. And naturally, you get this camp bug and you get this camp fever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work for the camp. I want to change lives. I want to tell people that they can do it because I was so fueled up. Never once in those thoughts did I ever say, I want to be a business owner. I mean, in all honesty, it was never something that crossed my mind.
Right.
And, you know, again, it was just an opportunity that, you know, I was running 3 locations. I was a regional director. I ran great locations, Lake Elsinore, Menifee, and Paris for a little while.
Okay.
And naturally, the next step was ownership.
Okay.
And I was like, well, hey, I'm already like doing all this work. You know, I know the company inside and out. I've worked every position within the company.
Right.
I know how to make them profitable. I know what to do. You follow the business model. You follow the plan. You don't reinvent the wheel, and you make it happen.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity was there, and I got a killer deal. Obviously, it was
Which didn't hurt. Yeah, right.
It was like one of those things. I remember going back to my husband saying, I was approached to buy a location. Like, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, let's go. And I was like, it was one of those moments where I'm like kind of like a client when they say like, well, let me go back and talk to my husband about it, you know? And we get that a lot. And I felt like I was doing that to him to kind of shut it down.
Right.
And instead he was like, no, you need to. Like, this is all you. Like, you could do it. And he just was like, so, like, I believe in you. You're, you know, all these things. And I was like, okay, we're doing it. Like, okay, that's cool. So then I was like super excited. And, you know, it's an amazing location. Right. So I love it.
That's great. And it makes all the difference when your significant other supports that, right? Like, I mean, you know, I'm going to go there, I'm going to say it, and they're going to talk me out of it, and we'll be back to where I should be, right? Status quo. Yeah. No, you got to do it, right? Oh, okay. Hey, not what you're expecting, but you dove in and you did it, right?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Well, and so, you know, you'd mentioned this before, too. It's like you took it over, you increased revenue significantly, not because what wanted to, but also you had to, right?
Yeah, no other option.
And then you ended up moving to a larger location anyways, and you got to kind of experience building a new club, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
That's exciting. You got the best of both worlds in one shot.
I did. I was very fortunate for that. So that was an exciting process.
Yeah.
But also doing that, I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I was running the location, I was building a new location, and I was like trying to balance it all, you know, and I was like, man, this is like a fun process, but to be honest, I mean, there was some stressful times hitting deadlines and getting approvals and making sure things were okay. And I was like, people do this. And I was just thinking like, and they don't even have any money coming in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at least you were lucky enough though, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, look me, I'm a real business owner. Running a club, building a new one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, so look, we have a lot of people that are kind of at a crossroads, right? Do I take over an existing location or do I build a new one, right? And I want to dig into that path of I'm going to take over an existing location. And when people ask me about that, I tell them a lot of times it's like buying a used car, right? You don't know what you're getting yourself into until you do a little due diligence, a little exploring. Take it out for a test drive, right?
Right.
So talk to us about how you assessed the existing location, existing opportunity, and then how do you know, what are the factors that play into determining if that is a good opportunity or the right opportunity, I guess?
Okay, so with Corona, you know, of course, I wanted to see the location. I wanted to walk through. I wanted to assess what they currently had, their space, where they were located, how feasible was it for people to come, how much could we grow, and then, you know, kind of looking at it once I got to the location, by the way, oh my gosh, it was like 1,800 square feet.
Wow.
And it was very tiny.
Right. Yeah.
It had no, like, the front desk, and then, like, 2 steps later, you're, like, in the gym. And I was just, like, looking around, and at first look, I was like, oh, my gosh, no way. This place is not what I envisioned. First of all, Corona. Like, I think of Corona, and I think beautiful city,
right?
You know, just a lot of opportunity, right? And I walked into that location and I was like, oh my gosh. But I didn't stop there. I was like, you know what? This isn't what I envision Corona, but I'm going to make it what I envision it, right?
There you go.
And so I did have to look past the discount Wolverine on the wall and the screaming like kettlebells and like weird stuff that they had, you know? But naturally, you know, I walk through, I do inventory,
Right.
you know, I look at that sort of thing. I dive into their mind body accounts.
Right.
You know, I look at what they're doing in terms of profitability. I want to look at their, you know, for that location at the time, it had 40 members because COVID.
Right.
So they had a few people that stayed on, you know, and I was like, I started with 40 members.
Wow.
Some of them were even year paid in fulls. So that just wasn't even any revenue.
Yeah.
And so then from there, I was like, okay, well, let me look at their like gym sales and how they're utilizing that,
Right.
how many people are in the system. Cause I mean, it's a huge database, right?
Right.
They weren't maximizing that. So I was like, okay, that's an easy fix.
An area of improvement.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, I can do that. You know, supplement sales, they weren't selling supplements. I'm like, well, that needs to change.
Low-hanging fruit, right? So another
Yeah,
easy
another
area that
easy
you know
area.
you can come in and be successful day one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then, you know, during that time, nothing else was open.
Right.
And I was like, well, we're opening. We're going to open. We're going to follow protocol, whatever we got to do.
Right.
But people were also naturally ready
Ready to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? We're going to create a space where people feel comfortable and safe. And then we're going to make it everything that we can. Yeah. And so those are things, you know, and obviously I want to look at, you know, what's their overhead? You know, how much are they paying in rent? You know, does this make sense? And I not only took over rent, but they had back pay for COVID. So my rent increased.
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm a hard worker. And again, I've been with the company a long time. I trust the company 100%, has a great business model. So I was like, I know how to make this profitable. I've done it before. I can do it again. And this time it's my own.
Right.
So there's a sense of ownership that's just completely different. So.
Well, you're working for you, not for somebody else, right? So the more it makes, the more you make, right? Which maybe that's not always the case, right? So
okay,
so a little more incentive, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so those are important considerations, though, right? I mean, you gotta go in and you gotta look at the quality of the club, which I always tell everybody, right? I mean, you gotta look at this club. Does it need paint? Is there broken equipment, right? Are there things that need immediate fixing, and who's paying for that?
Right.
Is it you, and then the sale price maybe comes down,
Right.
or is it the existing owner and the sale price might go up, right? But those are some considerations I think people never look at, right?
Yeah, and along with that, looking at their lease agreement is like
Right.
huge. What's covered, what's not covered, you know, and some people have really bad arrangements with what they're signing, and I don't even think they really pay attention to the detail of, hey, if the toilet, goes out, who fixes that?
Right.
Well, I learned very quickly that was something I fixed.
It was you.
So I can fix the toilet. No. But, you know, things like that are huge factors in just, you know, taking a location over.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Now, do you have, did you read through the lease on your own? Did you have someone professional help you?
Okay. Yeah. We always hire
So
out.
you recommend that?
Every time.
Okay. Because I see some people, they go, well, I'll read it. And I go, how many commercial leases have you read before?
No.
Because, and you know, I just read through about 15 or 20 of ours last week. And, you know, some of the leases, they're 45 pages.
Yeah.
Some are 145
Right.
pages.
Yes.
And I found that every lease is written different.
Yes.
Right? So if you don't know what you're doing,
Yeah.
I'm
attorney.
with you. Hire someone to review it, to read through everything, to give you a second set of eyeballs, and explain what things mean, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think leases are meant to be tricky and complicated
Right.
just for that reason, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what you're signing.
Yeah, they make it look pretty, and
Right.
then, just read, here, and I'm like, no, we need to send this off, So I always encourage, just send it off.
Right.
Especially like first-time business owners, even if, even the second location that I have, the
Right.
lease agreement and things like that, send it off.
Still had someone
What am I
review it.
signing?
Yep.
Does this benefit me? Is there
Right.
anything that we can change? And verbiage in a lease is everything.
Right.
So it gets tricky.
Yeah.
And so.
Absolutely. And it's a
Better to
complicated
source
part.
out.
And, you know, it's funny to me because it happens all the time. You're contemplating spending, whatever, a couple $100,000 on a new business, and you
Right.
won't spend $1,000
Yeah.
to make sure that the paperwork on something that you can't change once it's
Right.
signed, right? The lease is your biggest fixed expense outside
Yeah.
of payroll, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
maybe pay the $1,000 to have someone
Yeah.
review it.
And after having them review it, we did renegotiate things on the lease that was going to help benefit, me because I wanted out of that building. So that was a clause that I was like, hey, give me 6 months to opt out of this lease,
Right.
And so that was something that, sourcing out was able to help me with.
Because you wouldn't have done that on your own.
No.
Yeah.
I would have just signed, and I would have been there for another year.
Yeah, you'd have been stuck, right?
Right.
Well, that's really good advice, because I don't think people look at that, right? Being able to dig into the sales, but then seeing the sales potential.
Right.
I think that's what a lot of people have to focus on, right? Not all the time, but I'd say 70% of the time, if somebody's selling, it's because the location is underperforming.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's probably because the owner's ready to exit, right? They've made their money. They're ready to do something else. They're not putting as much attention to it. So I think that's great that you're able to dig in, see, well, I believe in me, and the sales are here, but I know I can get them here.
Yes.
And talk to us about that, because you've had some incredible success with the sales. In I think it was the first 6 months. You had go ahead, tell us tell us the story.
I was ready to improve the location, and for one, not a financial gain, but I'm really passionate about just the camp and everything that it encompasses of transforming lives. And I was ready to do the work because I had no other option. So when it came to taking over Corona, I had an existing team, but I was there every single day, morning and night for the first 6 months. Okay. Morning and night, morning and night. And through working with the team, you're setting the example of how to do things, how to execute things. Taking over that location, for example, they didn't know supplements at all. So that was, education that you have to do for this, hey, why do we sell supplements?
Staff, right, yeah.
So constantly just, working with them, educating them on that, to gym sales. They weren't utilizing tags. They weren't, it was a mess. They weren't scheduling things on the appointment. They had I think they had 1,800 overdues.
Tasks. Wow.
Yes.
So just not making the phone calls.
They were not
doing the work.
They couldn't even figure it out.
Right.
So just putting systems in place. And I had a lot of practice being with the company since 2016, where there was a time we didn't even have gym sales.
Right. Oh, I remember. I was doing it 20 years ago, right? And LVM, and you print out the sheet with the lead on it, and you make notes. Yeah, right. Or you had an Excel spreadsheet, which I hated.
Yeah. So a lot of it for that location was just training the staff, and they were really lacking leadership in that location.
Right.
Whereas the Marietta location, I wouldn't say that they were underperforming. It was just it was different, but they didn't have any systems in place. They didn't have things that they were doing, and so it was just putting in those systems, putting in those, tasks.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. I mean, I think that's a great segue into it, right? So, okay, you decide, hey, I'm going to do it, right? And eventually you take over the location. So there are some of those challenges that occur in the transition, right? There's as I would say, you've got the old guard and the new guard.
Yeah.
Right? So, you had old management leadership. You come in, you take it over. There's new management, new leadership. We're going to do things a different way. Some people are going to be okay with that. Some people might buck against that, right? So talk to us about what you saw there as far as the staffing goes, right? Was everybody receptive to new leadership, or did some people have to go?
Some people should have went faster. But I will say every time that I've, in Corona and Marietta, the first thing that I do is I make phone calls to the staff.
Yeah.
I introduce myself on a one-on-one type of thing. I'm chatting with them. I want to get to know them. I want them to be able to understand. At that point, I'm establishing my vision, where we're headed. I want to know why they do what they do. If they love their job, if they're passionate about helping people, and, what they love most about their job, what they don't like about their job. Those are things that I want to make sure that I understand going in.
Right.
Because not everybody's going to fit your vision. And if they don't, then they need to get off the boat. Right.
Yeah.
And you do have to think fast, because you just purchased a location. You want to hit the ground running. That's why you purchased an existing location.
Right.
So you don't have 6 months to evaluate staff and try to let's see if it's going to work out. As soon as it's not working out, most likely it's just not going to work out.
Right.
And
they're not going to come around in your experience, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No. And so I think, it's really important to get buy-in from people that you're going to be working with and motivate them at the same time to like the vision of where we're going. I said from day one in Corona, like, this is not where we're staying. We got big plans. We're going to have a beautiful location. We're going to be a top performing location, and we're going to do it by next year. And they were like, whoa.
Okay.
But they were like, hell yeah. Everybody wants to be on the winning team.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, we're the winner. We're the best. We're the best. We're going to be the best. We're going to have the best. We're going to execute things the best. Yeah. Right? And so there were some people that I had to cut immediately. Right. And I was just like, bye. No. But it's just not going to work with everyone.
But see, that's a question. Hey, Kyle, why are they selling? Why is the location underperforming? And it's I always, I say every time, it's leadership. Yes. It's the owner isn't involved. They're not, and again, we just talked about this. They've dialed out for whatever reason. And so as the new owner, you have to come in and you have to assess who's, a lot of times the staff is starving for the leadership and they want someone to come in with that type of attitude and say, look, we're going to be one of the best locations. Right. But you got to believe in me, you got to trust in me, and we got to follow the systems now, right? Yeah. And so that means there's going to be a lot of changes. And if you're willing to do it, great. And as we said earlier, if you're not, then you got to go. Yeah. Because you're going to drag everybody else down, right? Oh, yeah. They're going to be negative influence, right? And they're going to be, chirping behind your back and causing dissent. And it's not healthy. Right? It's not a healthy environment. At all. And so, I think I've shared this with you earlier. Alex Rodriguez has a podcast, and, he says the same thing, right? Fire fast, hire slow. Yes. Because you got to get the bad people out, right? And then take your time and find somebody who's a good replacement. But if you have to let a trainer go, people are concerned, oh, what do I do? So another trainer will take those hours. Yeah. Right? For the most part, yes. Yeah. Or you got to train a class. Yeah. But better that you're in there doing it than someone who doesn't want to be there, someone who's negative, talking poorly about the location to the members, right? Yeah. Complaining about new management. Yep. Better to just have them gone. Yeah, it's toxic. You just got to cut it. Right. And again, it's like, for me, I run the location, along with my team. I do have management now and things like that. I have a management team in both locations, but I am hands-on. Right. And they are handling the day-to-days, but I'm right there with them, So it took time to establish that. And, obviously, for instance, in Corona, I didn't hire a manager right away. Right. I was the manager. Yeah, I was you were everybody. AM and PM. I was everyone. But although I had other front desks, but I really wanted to take the time again to work with them, to see who needed to go, right. To see who performed when I was there and who didn't when I was gone, because people work harder when the owners were walking around. Right. Right. So, yeah. Well, and so is that something that is, because you said now I have a full-time management team, but I'm still there supporting them. So let's talk about that, right? Because I always tell, owners that are considering this, my goal isn't to sell you a job, right? I don't want you there 40, 50, 60 hours a week. My goal is for you to invest in a business. And as you are, I think we're at almost 40% of our owners are multi-unit owners. So my expectation is that if you take over an existing location, you'll grow, right? So is this something you have to continue to do, or what are the challenges or the things that an owner would need to expect as far as managing the staff as they take over a location, but then look to grow to a second or a third? So I think definitely with taking over the location, you really do need to know your staff. Just because the team might have a management staff in place doesn't mean that it's the right manager. Right. Right. And so as a new owner, you're not going to know that if you just, I just bought this location and it's just going to run itself. Right. And I'm just going to walk away and I'm going to, work 2 days a week and they already have a manager. I mean, that's laziness. Right. And you have to also understand that, yes, you did make a huge investment. Don't you want to know what's going on in the day-to-days of this new business that you just took over? Obviously, I didn't invest into, being an owner to work, like you said, 40, 60 hours a week. Right, right. But hey, in the beginning, if laying a solid foundation and taking over a location, if that takes you should take you no more than 30 days to assess who needs to go and who can stay. Right. And, in one of the locations, we had a manager who, she had been there for 7 years. She was the manager, wow. Everybody knew her. Kind of like the face. Totally. Yeah. And she ran that place as if it was her own. She was still not the right fit for the location.
And she had to go.
I think the performance indicates that, right? I mean, you were steering for the last 7 years, and this ship ain't on course.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So, it's things like that. But as somebody new taking over, and they think, oh, well, they already have a management team, don't just make assumptions.
Right.
That's the right team in place, because you can do a lot more, just being there and taking the time from the get-go. Yeah, it's not forever. I didn't want to be a business owner to work 40 hours a week.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And I try to explain that to people,
Yeah.
but I'm with you, right? You've got to inspect what you expect, right? And if you're not there, involved in it, right, going through the CRM, going through the gym sales, are they making the phone calls?
Right.
Don't just assume they are.
And even if they are making the calls, like the quality of the call.
Exactly.
And you're not going to be able to pick up on these things if you're not there.
Right.
So you can't be an absent owner at the beginning. I would never recommend that.
Yeah. And you don't have to micromanage them.
Right.
But, look, if 20% of the appointments is what's showing up,
Right.
hey, something's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's well below the average,
Yeah.
right? If every 10 you're
Absolutely.
setting, 2 are showing up,
Yeah.
there's something wrong in the way you're setting the appointments, right?
Absolutely.
And then you got to dig into that. I mean, that's your responsibility as the owner, right?
Yeah. And, especially taking over an existing location, you got to get the buy-in not only from the team, but from the members.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they might have liked the old owner.
Right.
And they're like, well, who's this? And nobody likes change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know one person that's excited about change usually. So you really need to when I took over Marietta, I was there, for the first couple of weeks in the morning and evenings and introducing myself and
Right.
mingling with the clients and getting to know them and, excited to be there and, letting them know who I was and taking the time with them too to get to know them. It is we're a relational gym, right?
Right.
It's a relationship-driven business, and they love seeing the owner there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to say they do.
Well, but I think you're right, though. They do, right? And people want to know who you are.
Yeah.
I tell all the owners, if you're not working out in your gym,
Yeah.
you're a fool. People get such a kick out of that. I took a class with the owner. They high five. Well, I was in their group today. They told me I'm doing great. People love that.
And it's cool too, because now last week I was taking a class in Marietta, and she was a new girl, and she's like, oh, hi. She's like, have you been here a while? And, I'm not like, oh, I'm the owner. I never say that. I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been here a little while.
And I love it.
Are you liking it? She's like, I love it. I'm like, me too.
Yeah.
And slowly they eventually find out oh my gosh, well, that was the owner?
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see. But it also allows you to kind of be that undercover boss.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if she was like, it's okay,
Right.
I'd be like, oh, really? Well, what's going on?
Yeah.
Tell me
What don't you
more.
like about it, right?
So, but yeah, I mean, I try to work out in the gyms, each gym at least, 3 times a week. And,
That's great.
it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I do.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that about not only do you have to get the staff on board, but you got to get the members on board, right? And so you got to be there. You got to let them know who you are, and you got to let them know that, hey, you can come to me if there's something that you want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Don't feel like you can't circumvent, right?
Absolutely.
Probably through email. Don't get out your cell number, but
no,
hey, send me an email and I'll address it, right?
Right.
I'm going to be dialed into this business, and I want to make sure everybody's having a good experience.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, because I hadn't thought about that. But you're right. You got to get member buy-in as well, right?
Yeah. And, taking over Marietta, I was able to give it a facelift, and so they love now. I came in and it was just very plain.
Right.
It needed new paint. It needed new mats. It needed, some improvements. And so being able to do that, it made when you invest into your business, it just really means, it means a lot to your members. Man, they really care. We got new paint or a new mat or new turf, whatever it is. And maybe you can't make those large investments, but you can do little things.
Right.
So.
Well, that was actually my next talking point. So let's talk about that. You've gotten in there, you've assessed the location, but now it's time for changes and improvements, right? And I couldn't agree more with you. Simple things like painting, people love it. A new wall display, a new front desk. It doesn't have to be $60,000 in equipment, right? Even one new machine or something that's been broken, right? If the treadmill's been broken, or they needed some new dumbbells, or the Dynamax balls or kettlebells or whatever, a couple $100 in new equipment, members' eyes light up because they're the ones using it, and they recognize that you care about them.
Yeah.
So what is that? How do you tackle that, right? So I know I'm taking over an existing location. I did my assessment, as we said. I determine, hey, there are some things that need to be fixed, addressed, and it ends up that I'm the one who's doing it, which hopefully I negotiated a lower price then,
Yes,
right?
that's exactly what you do.
There we go. So how do I decide what gets implemented first, or is there an order to it? Do you tackle small items, large? How do you do it? How did you decide?
Well, for Marietta,
Mm-hmm.
it was an easy decision because it was very plain. And it was
Okay.
it was like sad when you walked in. It was just like very red walls, and
Okay.
they were like slightly, like probably not even the right shade of red. And then I found out that like they had helpers, like members come in and paint, which is just crazy to me. But,
Okay. That's one way to do it.
you know, so that was an easy fix for me. I was like, okay, I'm looking around and I'm like, the bathrooms needed some updates,
Okay.
you know, so it was easy. You just, you know, that's not a large investment, a new vanity. It was not too much money.
Right.
But that's something that,
The
again,
members are going to
clients-
notice instantly. Because they're
Absolutely.
using it. It's getting used every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have cubbies, right? They had
Wow.
like plastic, like stackables, and they were just gross.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we need new cubbies.
Yeah.
You know,
I
so I
wanna
was like,
put my sweatshirt on my phone or a bottle of water someplace.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and then a huge one, they didn't have a display area for supplements. So they would they would only order supplements based on what people asked for. So they would like put a sheet out,
Wow.
and then they'd place the order and be like, well, we're going to order supplements. So if you need something, write it down.
Just
So
put
they
a little
never-
check mark.
Yeah, like they never stopped it. And I was like, that's a huge part of our revenue,
Right,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm like, obviously, first things first, what improvements can I make that's going to help me make money?
Right.
Well, if I put a display shelf out there with supplements where they can, you know, members can touch them
Touch it,
and
feel it, see
see
Yeah.
it, all those things, then that's going to help me increase sales, right? And obviously stocking the supplements.
Seems like a no-brainer, but
Yeah. So that was one of the first things I did. We
Right.
need a supplement shelf.
Yeah.
Why? Supplements generate me money.
revenue. Right.
Correct.
Okay. Which allow me to make some of these other improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
So I saw a tremendous increase in supplement sales in that location right away.
Okay. Very good.
Right away. And then, of course, I was like, well, let's, you know, do some graffiti on the walls. You know, let's,
Yeah.
at the time we were still in the
Right,
graffiti
that was the style,
stuff,
yeah.
You know, so that was the style. So, again, I was like, okay, cool. You know, had him come in and do that. And the member's face is just, like, lit up. Like, oh, my gosh, you know, and you get the, like, thank you so much. It looks great.
Right.
We have members coming back. You know, a lot of our members, as we know, are return clients.
That's right. That's right.
And so they get to walk in and, you know, oh my gosh, it looks great in here. I love the updates that have been made. It feels clean. You know, they didn't have a cleaning crew. And,
Wow.
you know, you got to take pride in your
Right.
location.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to spend some money to make some money. And that's what, you know, you can't cut corners on things like that. I
Right.
just don't feel like it's going to be beneficial. You don't cut corners like that. Like, you just don't.
You know, in the years I ran gyms, I always said, you know, people will forgive you for a lot of things, but if the place ain't clean
Yeah.
and it don't open on time and you're friendly,
Right.
those are kind of three you can't get around,
Yeah,
right?
you
Because those morning people, they need to be there when
Right.
the clock. You open 15 minutes late, you'll hear about it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But it's got to be clean, right?
Totally.
I mean, you're getting down on the ground, you're putting your face down there. Like,
Yeah.
I want it to be clean. I want the staff to be friendly,
Right.
and I want it to open on time. You know, outside of that, they'll forgive you for almost anything. They will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's like, if you're not doing those three, I mean, those are like the three basics.
Right.
So, you know, okay, great. So we're making improvements. You've got a cleaning crew, so it's cleaner now, right?
Yeah.
There's more product and supplements, which the members are buying them somewhere else anyway. We know that, right?
Right.
Like 70% of your members are on supplements of some sort, whether
Yeah.
they're getting them from the grocery store or Amazon.
Right.
You're just losing revenue by not having a display in there.
Absolutely.
So, you know, again, another thing to think about if you're looking at an existing location is get in there and see what their merchandise displays are.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have them, that's probably why there's no revenue coming in from them.
Yeah. And even if they need to be relocated, you know, I'm not a fan of behind the front desk like
Right.
old school it was before.
Right.
Like, you know, again, they got to be able to touch
Touch
them.
it, feel it, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Because I like to just peruse on my own, right? You know, I want to
Yeah.
hold the shirt up and say, am I a large or a medium or what? You know, what size am I, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to have to ask you to get a shirt down for me 17 different times, right?
Yeah.
Like my wife would never do that.
yeah.
If she wanted to see it and the only way to get it was for someone to hand it to her, she wouldn't even ask you, right? So you got to have stuff out where people can pick it up,
Oh,
they can
yeah.
touch it, and they can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, or you're hurting yourself,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, a good lesson though, right?
yeah.
Is, start making the improvements. They don't all have to be at once. In fact, I would almost recommend kind of trickling them in, because then it's
yeah.
like you're constantly doing something, right?
New. It's
You could do it all at once, and it's like, oh, they did a renovation. It's like, oh, we got new paint. No, we got new this. Oh,
Right.
we got new this.
Yeah.
Members love that, right?
And like easy things to do that maybe you're like, okay, things are a little bit tight.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes taking over an existing location, which I experienced in Marietta, they didn't use our app.
Wow.
Like, our app is...
Nobody
even knew that we had an app. Okay, that doesn't cost you money to do a class on like, hey guys, we're going to invite everyone in. We have this great app that you're going to use. It's your fitness diary,
Right.
And so that was like something that cost nothing, right? But on the flip side, they were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
For the consumer, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's already done. All they got to
Totally.
do is download it. Yeah, it's on the App Store. It's on the Google Play Store. Download it, and we'll teach you how to use it.
Yeah, they were so excited about that. Or like in-body machines, right? Every location has an in-body machine.
Yep.
And some of our members didn't even know what an in-body machine was.
That you offered that.
Correct.
So now not only is the location getting a facelift, but now you have all these added services
Right, that were actually...
that were there
Yeah.
that they weren't accessing.
Correct.
So now the member experience is better, right?
Yeah. And so they feel like supported. They feel
Wow.
just like... And again, that was something that cost... really, it's cost nothing.
Nothing.
We're just adding... adding it into what they should have already kind of been using.
And doing, right? Like they should have had this service. They should be making these appointments. And that's only going to drive one success.
Right.
Because now we're able to give more detail back to the member, right? They measure their progress better. Because sometimes it's not always weight, right? Like we're losing body fat or, water weight or whatever, right? But now they can see the breakdown.
Yep.
It creates more conversation with trainers. Probably drives personal training sales, probably drives supplement sales,
Everything.
right?
I can't tell you how many times we get somebody on the in-body machine and they end up, okay, yeah, let me do that, elite training.
Right.
I want to focus on building the muscle. Let me do the hard body, members only challenge or something. And they just feel so thankful overall.
Right.
And just so grateful. Like, thank you so much for, getting me on the scale like that today. And I'm like, of course.
Hey,
Like,
my pleasure.
my pleasure. Oh my gosh, I'll see you again. And, let's do it again in a month. And
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
okay, great.
Yeah.
So,
But see, the members that are doing that, they're buying in, right? Those are the
yeah.
members that aren't quitting either, because
Right.
it's like, I've got
Yeah.
my monthly appointment. And if they're
Yeah.
tracking their progress,
yeah.
now they're going to be able to see it more readily too.
Right.
We've got the documentation here that this is working. You are successful, right?
And then it is a selling tool, if they get on and their muscle mass is going down, what are you talking about? Protein.
Yeah, protein and strength training, right? We got to do it.
Yeah, you're not taking your protein. Oh, no, I haven't been taking. Okay, well, let's get you some protein on your way
And that's only a benefit to the member,
it's-
right?
it's
Like
a
they
tool.
don't know,
Yeah.
but that's kind of what they're paying for, right? They need the expertise of
Yeah.
the team,
Absolutely.
and they're not getting it, or they weren't getting it. Now they're getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Now they're getting it 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. Okay. Well, look, when you take over a location, we've talked about sometimes there's good, sometimes there's bad, but there's always something good, right? So how do we leverage the existing good, whether that's, our social media reputation is high, we have members who love us, we have really strong staff that was just lacking leadership. How do you make that assessment and say, okay, here are the good. Now, how do I leverage those to continue the growth success of the company with the new direction that I've set?
I mean, I think just having a client base where typically, 90% of our members love us.
Right.
And they love our programs. They love what we offer. And so I always say it starts with the team and, getting their buy-in, getting them to understand where we're going, the vision, all of those things. But the camp reputation as a whole, if you look at our Yelp reviews, if you look at our Google reviews, our Facebook, everything, people love us.
Yeah.
And at this point, everybody knows somebody who's done the camp.
Right.
I just walked into Corona on my way here, and there was a walk-in, and she's like, oh, my girlfriend does it, and she recommended you guys. And, time and time again, we have these appointments that come in because their friends are ranting and raving about how great we are.
Right.
And that's the camp's reputation. That's because we have an amazing brand and brand awareness, and we build off that, But again, with the right team who's also excited about how badass we are, and how much our clients love us. And, we were taking a call today, and she's like, yeah, I saw you guys on, I was looking at your Yelp. And so my front desk is like, yeah, what'd you think about our reviews? You know, because he knows.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
Everyone, I'm like, hey, let's, check out our reviews, and those are things that I factor into trainings with the team.
Right.
Just to get them to understand on a deeper level, like, dude, you guys, people love us, you know? And so that was something he said today on the phone. Like, so what'd you think about our or our Yelp reviews?
Right.
And she's like, oh my gosh, it looks like you guys are like awesome. Like, I'm so excited to get in there. She's coming in tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
So
that's fantastic. And I think you're right. It's, it's helping the staff understand that because, when leadership's lacking, they probably don't even know.
Yeah, no.
Right. So it's like, look, we've got a really strong brand. I was talking to a consultant, I don't even know, 2 months, 3 months ago. I actually just talked about this on one of the other podcast episodes, and the industry average in boutique fitness, typically it's like a 4.4 or 4.5 rating, right? Okay. The camp holds, like, most locations are at a 4.7.
Yeah.
And then a lot of locations are in the 4.8, 4.9. So, we're 20, 30% above the industry average when it comes to boutique fitness. That is an area where we excel. People love the brand.
Yeah,
right?
they love the brand. And I think that we have really, like, set a new trend to fitness, the camp as a whole, because we're very, again, client experience. Right. We're very about our clients. We love our clients. We want to make them feel valued, special, right. Give them an experience that you're not going to get anywhere else. Like, we're the #1 fitness brand in the country.
Right.
Period. Like, we have the best product.
Yeah. And, and I think it's, look, you can work out anywhere. I mean, we're fitness people. You're not going to get fit in the parking lot right now, right? Just mark off a space, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what you're coming for.
Right.
You're coming for exactly what you said, the experience, right?
Correct.
And you want to interact with the staff and the other members, and you want to feel the energy inside the building, and you want the excitement.
Yeah.
And I think that is a big part of it, right? So if you can take some of those, again, when you're assessing the business, you find some of those diamonds in the rough, so to speak, right? And you saw some things in Corona, you said, okay, they're doing some of these things right, and I'm going to build on that. And when you took over Marietta, hey, they're doing some of these things right, and I'm going to build on that. Yeah. But then it's figuring out what they're lacking too, right? And then you have to put it all together to kind of drive it forward.
Absolutely. So
you've taken over 2 clubs.
Yes.
And you've even expanded the one, which we talked about, right? So as somebody who's watching the podcast right now, if you could maybe summarize some of the lessons that you've learned, and from taking over, and are there any future growth plans that you might have for taking over other locations?
Absolutely. So lessons I've learned, I'd say the biggest ones that stick out to me are be within the location, right? Like, feel it out, feel the energy, and when you have this gut-wrenching feeling, go with it. Just go with it. You're going to save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money. If somebody's not working out, just cut them.
Yeah.
Just get them out. Because, again, the last thing you need is a toxic environment. That is not what the camp brand stands for. That is not what we're about. So I would definitely say there's some times that I've tried to give people a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And so I would definitely just say, go with your gut.
Yeah. Well, and if you feel like someone's not the right fit, it's not like you feel that way about everybody there.
No.
So there's probably a reason you feel that way, right? Yeah. And I'm sure, it's not one instance. You've probably gotten a sense of that from the members, other employees, right? Yeah. Things you've seen them do, firsthand accounts, right? Yeah. So, if you feel that way, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah, and especially when you're taking over an existing location, you really have to be within the building, within those walls, to see how things are being handled. Right. Even if it's checking people in, a simple task. Right. You want it done correctly. Right. You don't want somebody just standing there while they check in. You want that person that's behind the desk going, hey, how are you? Good morning. And you have to make sure that that's being done when you're there, when you're not there. And you're never going to know, especially just taking over an existing location does not mean that it's operating the way that it should or at its maximum, potential. Yeah. Yeah, even a successful location can do better. Yes. Right? Always areas for improvement. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think, you're right, like even a simple task, right? And I used to just, you're sitting there and the phone rings and you wait to see how the front desk answers it and they pick it up and, oh yeah, the last class starts at 6:30. Okay, goodbye.
To the average person, they think nothing about that, right? But you and me,
Right.
I'm like, did you ask them if they're a member? Because they'd probably know when the classes were if they were, right? So you should have led with,
Yeah,
are you a member,
correct.
right? And see, the moment I hear that, I'm thinking, but again, someone who's not there, someone who's not checking up on their staff, someone who's, they hang up and you go, hey, did you ask me if they were a member? Oh, no, I didn't. Like, oh, we might have lost the sale. So
Right.
star 69 and call them back. And I had staff do that though, right? Like, I don't know if that even works anymore. That's how old I am. But you could star 69 and go, hey, this is so-and-so over at the gym. I forgot to ask if you were a member. You know. But if they're not, they may have had other questions, right?
Yeah,
like you're kind of giving the consumer a bad experience.
Yeah, and I mean, you only have a few seconds for people to make their opinion,
Right.
As soon as somebody walks through the door, I mean, it takes literally 3 seconds for them to develop an opinion about the facility, the cleanliness, how they were greeted.
Right.
It's everything. So you have to constantly, but you have to be there to see what's going on.
Right.
And you won't have to be there, forever, every single day. But in the beginning, you really do want to make your location great. Then you got to put in the work too.
Yeah.
And, don't reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
The camp, you bought into the franchise because you believe in the product.
Yeah.
You believe in their vision. You believe in, overall the company and what it encompasses with, their programs, what they offer and things like that. They don't need you to come in and reinvent anything.
Mm-hmm.
You need to just use your resources. You need to get on your sales calls, work with your team. But they don't need you to come in and invent something new,
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of just trusting the franchise.
Right. I mean, otherwise, go open your own gym.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's the whole idea behind being a franchise, I think. So it's, for
The
me,
benefit.
the benefit.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it is the benefit, right? So, I think if you get in and you make the assessment and you decide that you want to do it, right? And you've kind of given them a step-by-step roadmap. Look at these things, right?
Yeah.
Then make the decision. But if you decide to do it, then do it, right? And follow the systems that are in place.
Correct.
Support your staff.
Yeah.
Grow your staff, develop your staff, and if you've got bad staff, get rid of them.
Get rid of them quick.
Well, look, Brittny, I really appreciate your time today. I think this is going to be an invaluable resource for anybody out there who's considering taking over an existing camp location. We really do appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.